It's really an honor to be here this evening. It's been an honor to be here for the entire Shabbos, actually. Impressive to see a community of people that are what we would call Mevakshe Hashem, people that are looking and striving to grow, people that are trying to make changes in their life, and people that are moving constantly in the right direction. This is not something you find throughout the world, but you certainly find it in Cincinnati, Ohio. And for that you should all be grateful to your very Chashav Rav, Rabbi Alt, and all of his cast of tremendous Rabbanim that are here putting in their effort and putting in their work, because you can see the fruits of their labor in front of you. You know, some people, when they get up to speak about Shalom Bayis and marriage, they like to start off their speeches with marriage jokes. Like, for example, behind every angry woman is a husband who has no idea what he's done. Or perhaps the joke of all the jokes that you heard about husbands and wives in marriage before you got married, now you find out that they're true. Or maybe there's the joke of the woman that is frying, the wife that's frying eggs in the kitchen, and the husband bursts into the kitchen and he starts overlooking her shoulder. And he says, more butter, more butter, more butter, you're going to burn the eggs. She puts in more butter, more butter, you're going to burn the eggs. What's the matter with you? He says, turn him over. Where's the salt? Where's the salt? She's looking for the salt. You got to put more salt, more salt, more salt, more salt. And the wife looks at her husband and says, what is the matter with you? You think I don't know how to make fried eggs? And the husband responds very calmly, I just wanted you to understand what it's like when I'm driving, you're sitting in the passenger seat. But I don't make those kind of jokes when I start speaking about Shalom Bayis. Because Shalom Bayis is a very serious thing. Your marriage is the anchor in your life. It's what's going to give you simcha throughout the day. It's when it's going to give you into a wonderful menuchas hanefesh, a good feeling when you walk into the house. It's going to affect the way that you look and treat your children. It's going to affect you in your office, in the store, when you're waiting in line. And therefore, Shalom Bayis is something that is so central to our lives, it's worthwhile to speak about it in a bit of a serious manner tonight. When Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zeichet Tzaddik Livracha, was nifter when he passed away, they asked his Rebbitzin, what was it like to live with Rav Moshe Feinstein for those 60 or 70 years that you were married? And without skipping a beat, the Rebbitzin said, it was like being married to a Malach Hashem Tzvakos, which means it was like being married to an angelic angel of a God, of Hashem. Now, all of you that are here with your spouses, just stop and think for a moment. If you would turn, and it's good that it's a little bit dark in the room so nobody can see their facial responses and reactions. If you would turn to your spouse right now and say, honey, dear, what is it like being married to me? Would she say, or would he say, Malach Hashem Tzvakos, or Malach Hamaves, the angel of death? What would they say? There's people looking very uncomfortable right now. This is something that a person has to keep in mind. In every interaction, in every word that they say, in every way that they treat their spouse. At the end of 120 years, when you're going to go up to Shemayim, your spouse is going to be sitting there and they're going to ask her or him, how was this person throughout marriage? What kind of a person were they? A Malach, Hashem, good midas, character, soft, gentle, understanding, compassionate, merciful, helpful, or maybe not, maybe the opposite. So I want to share with you the words of Rabbi Yeruchim Levovitz, who was the great mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva in Poland. He was a master of human psyche and psychology, how a person would know themselves, but how people would get to interact in the proper way with others. And it goes back to Parshas Mishpatim. There's a mitzvah in the Torah that says, Kol almana v'yasam leisa anun. Any almana, any widow, and any yasam, any orphan, leisa anun, you cannot oppress them. And Rashi on the spot asked the very famous question, only an almana, only a yasam, only someone that's a widow and someone that's an orphan, you're not allowed to oppress them? You can't be cruel to them? What about everybody else in the world? You could be cruel. You could be not nice to your children when they come home with a bad report card. If your wife burns the chicken for Friday night dinner, you can give her one of those sour faces that you're so good at giving her. When your husband forgets your birthday for the 50th time, not that anybody's here, it's not 50th time, but if you would be, you're gonna ram it down his ears one more time. You ingrate, you don't appreciate me, you don't love me. Only for the almana, only for the yasam, you have to be nice. Says Rashi, Hu hadin l'chol adam. Every single person that you come in contact with, you have to be nice to them. However, the Torah is teaching us, Shem tashushi koyach v'davar matzila noisam. They're a little bit weaker. An almana, a woman who lost her husband, she's more fragile, she's more emotional. A yasam, a child who lost a parent, they're more emotional, they're more fragile. So you have to be very careful with them. But really, says Rashi, everybody needs that. Now we're living in a world today of tremendous fragility. That means that most people in the world today, they're like an eggshell. If you touch them in the wrong place, they're going to crack. You look at a person in the wrong way today, their whole day is ruined. You cut them off on the way. I don't think in Cincinnati there's no traffic, so you don't know what cutting off cars means. But if you would know what that means, you cut a person off as they're driving down the highway and they have those angry feelings in their mind. It takes them about 2 hours to calm down after they finally get into the office after such a thing. We live in a very weak and a fragile world. And therefore, a person has to be extremely careful. So he brings down a Maisa from the Midrash. And the Maisa is of Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, they were going out to get killed. We know, we read about them on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. The Yisara Malchus, the 10 martyrs that were going out to be killed. And Rabbi Shimon was bothered. He didn't understand. Why is it? Rabbi Yishmael said to Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon didn't understand, why is it that he had punishment decreed upon him that he's going to get killed right now? What did he do so bad? So Rabbi Yishmael asked him the following questions. In all the days of your life, did you ever delay for a moment when somebody came to ask you a question and you were busy drinking your glass of tea and you told them, just hold on just 1 second? Did anybody ever come to ask you a shaila, a halachic query, and you were busy tying your shoes and you asked them, hold on one moment, I'm just busy tying my shoes? Said Rabbi Shimon, I didn't realize how careful a person has to be with somebody else's life and somebody else's feelings. Nechamtani, Rebbe, Nechamtani, you have comforted me. I now realize the error of my ways, why it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing what he does. Says Rabbi Yeruchim, frightening words. I don't want to frighten you tonight because I had such a good Shabbos. But his words are that a person has to realize that you are holding another person's life in your hands. Their simcha in life is in your hands. Their success in life is in your hands. Them feeling confident and good about themselves and feeling relaxed and comfortable wherever they go, it's in your hands. And if a husband and a wife does something to their spouse that is painful, that is hurtful, that is rude, that is insensitive, then you are taking the life of that person who you stood under the chuppah with so many years ago, with googly eyes, laughing and giggling and looking at each other. And when you sat by the Sheva Brachas and you heard, he's such a tzaddik, you're thinking to yourself, really, this guy's a tzaddik. She's the most amazing Balas Chesed in the world. She hasn't made me dinner in 5 months already. What kind of Balas Chesed is she? If you are not sensitive to your spouse and their needs and their emotional world and their sensitivities, says the Torah, you are transgressing the prohibition of Lo Sa'anun. You're not allowed to oppress another single human being. There's a beautiful ma'aseh that was just printed in the book on Rabbi Dovid Feinstein. He and his wife, the Rebbitzin, they were going to Eretz Yisrael on a trip, on a vacation, which was a big rarity for them. And they were very excited. They're going away, traveling, they're going to go to all the holy sites, going to daven, they're going to pour out their hearts to Hashem. And one of the days was scheduled, it's all going to be the Kivrei Tzadikim, the Koisel, Kever Rachel, Mars HaMachpelah. They have a driver all set up, and they're going to go drive around all day long and just daven and daven and daven. And Reb Dovid and his wife loved to daven for people. They go to the Koisel. They have an amazing, amazing time there, pouring out their hearts. They have lists of all the chaylim that they have back from America, davening and davening and davening away. There's a beautiful picture in the book of the Rav and the Rebbitzin, and she's in a walker, standing by the Koisel, big smiles on their face. Next stop, Kever Rachel. Anyone who ever davened by the Kever Rachel, they know the tefillah that comes in that place. And they poured out their hearts once again, davening for everyone they possibly could. They finished Kever Rachel. It's time to go to Mars HaMachpelah in Hebron. Daven by Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Leah. And as they're walking to the car, Reb Dovid Feinstein says to the driver, I changed my mind. We're not going to go to Mars HaMachpelah. The driver said, Rosh Hashiva, we're all set. The car is here. We're ready to go right now. We're going to go. He said, no, I changed my mind. Just take us back to where we're staying. And the Rebbe says, Reb Dovid, why not? Let's go to Mars HaMachpelah. We're the daven. He said, my dear wife, the reason that we are here on this vacation is for us to spend time together. In order to get into the Mars HaMachpelah, into the cave itself, there are a lot of stairs. You have a walker. You can't get up the stairs. And that would mean I have to go into the Mars HaMachpelah by myself, without you by my side. I'm not going if I can't go with you. She said, but there's a wall right by the edge of the stairs. I can stand by the wall. I'll daven. My tefillos will go up to Shemayim from there. He said, if I can't be with you, then I'm not going to go into the Mars HaMachpelah. And Rabbi Dovid Feinstein, who flew all the way from America, who only came rarely to Eretz Yisrael, decided that the sensitivity to his wife, to show how much he loved her, and he cared about her, and he was together with her, was more valuable than davening at the kever of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov Avinu. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be like malachim, like angels in our marriage. To think constantly about not ourselves, but to think constantly about our spouse, the one that is sitting next to us. What does she need? What does he need? How can I help them? How can I make their life better? When a person gets married, they begin to realize very quickly, if you didn't realize it yet, it's no longer about me. It's not even about us. It's about her or it's about him. My whole life is about the person that's sitting in front of me. What can I do for them? And the minute that I lose sight of that, as Rav Dessler writes in his Shmuz to Chassanim, all of the simcha in your house will fly out the window. The moment you start thinking about yourself and you stop thinking about the other person, all of the joy, all the happiness, all the peace, all the kedusha, it all begins to leave the house because there's nothing left over there. One of my favorite stories of all time in Shalom Bayis is a story that goes back to the days of the old city of Yerushalayim by the turn of the century. There were many hidden tzaddikim that lived there. And they were really nistarim, they were really hidden. Most people did not know. You had the simple shoemaker who was holding in all of the Torah on his fingertips. The carpenter who they found after his death shoved away in the corner of his store pages and pages of his writing on the Zohar HaKadosh. He was a tzaddik, nobody knew about it. One of these hidden tzaddikim was a man by the name of Yaakov. And one day Yaakov wasn't feeling so well. And another day he wasn't feeling well. Another day they went to the doctor came to him. And suddenly the doctor said at a certain point, there's nothing we can do. He has some kind of a rare disease. This was ancient medicine back then. There's nothing that we can do. The best I can tell you to his wife was, make your husband as comfortable as can be. And so Yaakov is lying on his bed. And his Rebbitzin comes over. She says, my dear husband, what can I do for you? As your strength is ebbing away, what can I do for you? What is the last chesed I can do for you? And he looks at his wife and he thinks for a moment and he says, you know, we're so poor. It's been such a long time since I had a hot bowl of porridge. I haven't even smelled a hot meal in this house for a long time. I would like a bowl of porridge. So the Rebbe said, fine. She goes to her cupboards, nothing. She looks in the drawers, nothing. She should have gone to the shul's kitchen. She would have found a lot. So she starts going to the neighbors. And from one neighbor she borrows some oats. And another one she gets a little bit of salt. And another one some sugar, and another one some milk. And she comes like a woman who's offering a korban to Hashem. She comes back to the house. She stokes the fires. She pours in all the ingredients of the pot. And before you know it, the smells of fresh porridge are wafting through the house. And she pours out the one and only bowl of the porridge. And as she's offering an offering to her husband, she comes over to him. She says, my dear husband, here is the porridge that you asked for. I made it just for you. And her husband looks at his wife and he says, my dear wife, in a few hours, I'm no longer going to be in this world. I don't need this bowl of porridge. But you're going to have to take care of the funeral arrangements, and you'll have to take care of the children, and you'll have to take care of all the details of everything that's going to take place when I leave this world. I didn't want the porridge for myself. I want the porridge for you, because you are the one who needs the strength to continue going on. And with that one act of chesed, she ate the bowl of porridge, and then her husband passed away. Who are we thinking about in marriage? thinking about ourselves? What we need, go order on Amazon if you need something. Go Craigslist it. Or what's the one that comes to the house? Instacart. Instacart your happiness for yourself. But for your spouse, there's never enough that a person can do to make sure that your husband or your wife knows how much you actually care about them. In Mishlei, there's a very famous pasuk. And Shlomo Melech writes, Maves v'chayim biyad haloshen. Death and life is in the hands of the tongue. The Al-Shich HaKadosh points out over here that many people, when they quote this pasuk, they always quote it wrong. They always say, Chayim v'maves biyad haloshen. Life and death is in the hands of the tongue. But that's not what Shlomo Melech says. Maves, death, and life is in the hands of the tongue. Do you know why he says the Al-Shich? Because it's so much easier and it's so much more natural, unfortunately, for a person to say the wrong thing than to say the right thing. The nature of a person in this world is they're always looking in at the wrong, at the bad, what they don't have, what's missing. You know, they did this famous psychology study years ago. There's like a picture of this woman, a beautiful face, but she has a big mole right on her nose. And they asked the person, what do you see? 90% of the people, they see the mole. They don't see the picture of the beautiful woman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives her life. It's filled with bracha, blessings, chesed, kindness, so many things. And what do we see all the time? We see the mole. We see the mole on our spouse. We see the moles on our children. We see the moles in our parnasa. We see the moles in our shul, not this shul. We see the moles in the community, not this community. We see the moles everywhere. Instead of looking and seeing the beauty. Therefore, warn Shlomo Melech, your mouth, your tongue, it is a lethal weapon. It could either give maves, death, it could destroy, or it's going to give chaim, it's going to give life. We have to ask ourselves sometime, we need to keep like a tracking device. I think there's some joke that's out there that a husband should remember that every time that he opens his mouth, that this conversation will be recorded for quality services. You might not remember what you said, but believe me, you know this already. Your wife will never forget a single thing that you said. I remember myself. I asked my wife, I'm allowed to tell this story. She gives me permission. My wife and I were married for 8 years. We had Kenai Nahara, quite a few children. We're living a very beautiful marriage, Shalom Bayis. And one night my wife and I are talking and she says, why didn't you call me after the Vort? I said, whose Vort? I don't remember going to a Vort recently. She said, why didn't you call me after the Vort? I said, what Vort are you talking about? She said, ours. I said, our Vort? 8 years ago? We're married, children, happy, everything? What are you talking about? She said, do you remember when you were saying goodnight to me at the Vort? And I was standing on the stairs of the shul where the Vort was, and you said goodnight, and you said, I'll call you when I get home. Do you remember that? I said, I don't, but apparently you do. She said, I was just wondering why you never called me after the Vort. It reminds me I have to call my wife after this class tonight. This is the mind of a woman. She doesn't forget a single thing. And if you forget it, she'll remind you of it. So you better make sure that the words that come out of your mouth and the facial gestures that you are wont to make and the body language that you come home with sometimes after a hard day, or those comments out of the corner of your mouth. What'd you say? Nothing. By the way, ladies, you don't get off so easy either. We'll talk about this more tomorrow morning by the brunch. But I spoke to a very successful marriage counselor. I was dealing with a certain case and I needed some advice. She's a woman, she's a frum lady. And I had a couple that they were fighting a lot about certain things and I needed to hear a perspective. And after we worked on this thing, she told me at the end of the day, I want you to know something. Everybody thinks that most of the problems in marriage are because of the men. They're insensitive, they don't pay attention, they don't listen, they don't do this, they don't do that. This is a frum lady. She said, I want to let you know, most of the couples that I counsel, the real problem, you ready, is the women. They nag, and they bicker, and they argue. And now the new thing is with texting, they save every text. I have people sitting in my office. You want to see what my husband sent to me 3 years ago? Look how he talks to me. So we have a lot of work to do on both sides of the table. We got to be so careful with our actions, with our speech, with our body language. How we express our love to our spouses. How we draw them close, not chas v'chalila push them away. Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from each and every one of us. So that at the end of 120 years, when Ami magazine is interviewing your spouse, and they say, so what was it like to be married to Rachala? He'll say, Malach Hashem Tzvakos, like an angel. She was amazing. She cared for me. She loved me. She took care of me. She even was forgiving of me. What was it like to be married to Yitzi? Oh, Yitzi is unbelievable. The way that he thought about me, everywhere that he went, he always called me. He would send me a text when he was coming home late. You know what they say. When a woman says, I'll be ready in 5 minutes, that's like a man saying, I'll be home in 5 minutes. Yeah? A man has to get used to sending a message every once in a while. I'm running a little bit late. I'll be home soon. Your wife's waiting at the door. She's waiting for you. When husbands and wives begin to treat each other in the right way, sky's the limit on the simcha that is going to exist between the two of you, and that simcha permeates your marriage, your house, your life, and everything. I want to leave you off with one more maisa, if I have a little bit of extra time. And this is really not Shalom Bayis per se, but Shalom Bayis has a very strong effect on our children, as we know. The story that I heard once of a couple that would fight all the time, but they made a deal with themselves. We're only going to fight behind closed doors. Never in the dining room, never in the living room, never in the kitchen. Our kids cannot know how much we're fighting. So every time they would get angry with each other, they would go into the bedroom and they would have it out. So one day they get a knock on the door. And the mother opens the door and her little kid, 10-year-old daughter, is standing there. She has a book in her hand. How to have a happy marriage. She says, Mommy, I think you and Tati could use this. The kids know everything. If you're angry with your wife, your kids know it. You're angry with your husband, your kids, they feel it. They know everything. One of the unfortunate maladies that is in the world today of Klal Yisrael is children that are struggling in their Yiddishkeit. There's almost not a community in the entire world that is not struggling with these things, unfortunately. Kids from the best of the mishpachas, the best of the families, going off the derech of Torah and of mitzvahs in ways that we never dreamed of or saw in hundreds of years. And it's struggling. Struggling for the children, and it's struggling very much for the parents as well, dealing with a whole new a whole new vision of what's going on in their family. So there's a family living in Lakewood. The story goes back maybe 10, 15 years. And they had a son, Yitzi, and he went off the derech. Stopped keeping mitzvahs. And by the time the story takes place, he was already being mechal Shabbos, not keeping Shabbos, nothing anymore. And one Friday night, as the father is about to make Kiddush, the mother calls up to the room. She says, Yitzi, Tati, Abba's making Kiddush. You want to come down? And he lets out some kind of a grunt or a noise from his room. And he comes down the stairs. T-shirt, jeans, defiant face on him. And the father stands up to make Kiddush, and all the kids are gathered around the table, and Yitzi's leaning against, right by the wall, holding his hands like this, just staring down his father. And the father begins making Kiddush. Yoy mashishi, vayichulu hashemayim v'aretz v'chol tzavam. And suddenly Yitzi, in the middle of Kiddush, takes his elbow and he pushes it into the light switch and he turns off the lights in the dining room. The father loses it. He drops the Kiddush cup. You, look what you're doing to our family. You, look what you're doing. And he begins chasing the boy. And the boy's running around the table. And the mother's trying to get in between them. The kids are throwing pillows in between them to stop them. Nothing stopping them. And the father's lunging for the kid, and the kid runs out the house. And in the front yard is a metal rake. And the kid picks up the rake. It's Friday night, Shabbos in Lakewood. And he begins smashing every single window that he can get the rake onto in the house. And then he drops the rake and he runs. And the parents are left in the house to pick up the pieces. After Shabbos is over, Yitzi's father gets a call from his uncle. And he tells him, don't worry, Yitzi ran to me. He's welcome to stay in my house as long as he wants to. And this family, this father and this mother, they called somebody by the name of Rabbi Shimon Russell, who is one of the big mechanchim in the world of Klal Yisrael today, whose field of expertise are children that are Rachmana litzlan off the derech. And they called him and they told him the story, and he said, come down, let's meet, let's talk. And they started going to him for weekly sessions and counseling, how to deal with it, how to make communication, how to talk to Yitzi, how to love him. But for 6 months, Yitzi refused to make communication. After about 6 months, Yitzi's uncle calls Rabbi Russell and he says, Yitzi would like to come home to his parents for Shabbos. Can you arrange such a thing? And he said, I'll try. So at the next session that they have, he tells him, the uncle called me, and he told me that Yitzi, after 6 months, he misses you, and he would like to come home for Shabbos. How do you feel about that? We know what happened the last time. Would you like him to come back? And the parents start crying. Of course. We love him. He's our son. We miss him. We want him to be home for Shabbos. I said, okay, let's work together. Let's play out the scenario. Let's talk about what has to happen, your reaction, how you're going to deal with things, just in case Yitzi does a repeat performance of the last time that he was there. And after Rabbi Russell felt that the husband and wife were strong, he called the uncle and he said, they're ready for Shabbos with their son. Yitzi comes home Friday afternoon, jeans, t-shirt, but he's smiling. Everybody hugs him. The kids are so excited. Yitzi's home, Yitzi's home. He's in a good mood. His mother gives him some of his favorite food. He goes up to his room. No one's touched it. It's exactly the way that it was when he left. And he's in the room. He closes the door. And the father's getting ready to go to shul. Yitzi says, I'm going to shul, you want to come with Tati? No, that's okay, Dad, I'm fine. Okay, fine, no problem. The father goes to shul. He comes home, he starts giving brachas to his children. Yitzi's still in the room. And the family's gathering around the table getting ready for Kiddush. And the mother calls up, Yitzi, Tati's making Kiddush. And Yitzi lets out a grunt. And he comes down the stairs in his shirt and his jeans and a defiant look on his face already. And the whole family is on eggshells. And the father stands up to make Kiddush. And he begins. Yoi Mashishi. And Yitzi's standing against the wall like this. La yechulu hashamayim v'aretz v'chol tzevaam. And the next thing you know, in the middle of Kiddush, Yitzi walks to the wall and with his elbow turns off the lights in the dining room. But this time the father doesn't skip a beat, and he continues making Kiddush till the very end. At the end of Kiddush, he pours the grape juice into all of the cups. And he takes a cup and he walks over to his son Yitzi. And he says, this is for you. If only I would have known then what I know now, things would have been much different between us. And at that point, the father starts crying. And then Yitzi starts crying. And they're holding each other in an embrace. And the mother comes over and she starts hugging him and she starts crying. And all the kids in the family come over and they're crying. And the next thing you know, the family has fallen onto the floor and they are crying uncontrollably. And that night, in the life of this family, for that young boy, was the turning point in their relationship and the turning point in his life. It was a rocky road, but he ended up becoming frum once again. And he went off to learn in Yeshivas Mir in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. And he's living a life of Torah and of mitzvahs, and he's an ehrlich, God-fearing Jew. Why? Because his father and his mother didn't think about themselves. They thought about their son. And when he's able to think about himself, life changes. This marriage that all of you are in, you have to stop thinking about yourselves. You have to think about your spouse. Because if you are concerned with what you're going to get and what your spouse is going to do for you, then you'll never ever be able to give your spouse what they need from you. And a person who lives their life like that, a person who's giving and caring and loving for the other one, the only thing that you will find in that house is a house that is mully, that is filled with simcha, that is filled with respect, that is filled with understanding, that is filled with comfort, with rachmanis, with compassion. And then when people walk into your house, they feel the shalom bayis that's in that house. And they say, this is what a Yiddish house is supposed to look like and feel like. I want to leave all of you with a bracha that I received myself when I was a chassan. It was about a week after Sheva Brachos. I came back to Baltimore. Our apartment was not yet ready. We were living in somebody's basement. And I wanted to be a good husband, so I didn't go to yeshiva every single day. I stayed with my wife and we got things ready. We prepared everything. So I would go in the morning to a shul in Baltimore. And the Rav was Rabbi Vitzik. Rabbi Vitzik was a Talmid of the HaChaim. Student of the HaChaim. And I was learning there in the morning with a friend of mine, and my friend says, Rabbi Vitzik, this is my friend Dovid, he just got married. Give him a bracha, Rabbi. Give him a bracha. This is a man who learned by the HaChaim. And the blessing that he gave me was, may the Shechina always be comfortable in your home. Do you know what that means? That means that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to pop in on you, any time of the day, any day of the week, with whatever's going on, your house is such a house of Shalom Bayis, the Shechina always feels comfortable coming inside, because that's the place that he knows that he can rest his holy name. May you all be zeicher that the Shechina always feels comfortable in your homes, and in that zechus you'll continue building your bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael, and you'll take those bate kedusha, those homes of holiness, of sanctity, of simcha, of happiness and joy, and we'll take them all together as one with our mishpachas and our kehilas and all of Klal Yisrael. We'll take them speedily and in our days to Yerushalayim Yir HaKodesh b'mheira v'yameinu.